Welcome, everybody. We are thrilled to host this live Q&A all about homeschooling, pre-K through fifth grade today. This live is the first in a four-part series. So, if you have children of other ages with special needs, we have other live question and answer posted in the comments, so you can join us for those too. My name is Dr. Rochelle Matthews-Somerville, and I'm the team lead for the Special Needs Educational Consultants here at HSLDA. I've homeschooled 6 of my own, and I've been serving over 20 years of experience with youth and other families in the field of early childhood special education. I'm excited to be here. So joining me is my co-laborer, Krisa Winn. She's one of our HSLDA's special need consultants, and she spent many years working in early childhood and elementary education, in addition to homeschooling her own 2 children. So welcome, Krisa.
Hey, thanks, Rochelle. And to everyone joining us on Facebook, we're so glad you're here. Will you let us know where you're joining from and how long you've been homeschooling in the comments? We'd love to hear that. And go ahead and start putting any questions that you have for Rochelle and I in the comments too, because we both know from experience that homeschooling can be so rewarding and have so many memories that can be made as a family, but there are challenges too. So finding support for any questions you run into on your homeschool journey is so important, and we're happy to be able to host this live and help with some of your questions. So we're gonna get started and see if we have any questions just yet. We've got, is it Sierra from Illinois? Her oldest just turned 6, so we're glad to have you joining us. We've got some other people from Puerto Rico. Wow, that's awesome. Well, I think, Rochelle, this is what we do every day, right? As consultants
Absolutely.
at HSLDA, we talk to our members and get a variety of questions. But I'm going to just start with one that we got from a gal. Her name is Rachel, and she asked this on our Facebook page some time ago, but she said, are there resources which outline how children should progress through the essential concepts in math and reading? It would be helpful to have something to guide me through the progression of what a child generally should learn and by what general age he should know it. And I know I get that question a lot. I work in our early years department as well. And in a lot of states, the only guidance that there is for what to teach is teach reading, teach math, science, history, and PE and music, which is awesome because you've got so much freedom, but sometimes that can feel like you're free falling a little bit, because you're like, somebody tell me exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So do you have any suggestions for mamas that are wondering about
Absolutely.
that?
A lot of people aren't familiar with a scope and sequence. And so this is a big one for people. That scope and sequence refers to topics and content or skills studied that are commonly introduced at certain age groups and at certain grade levels. And this is wonderful because in every state, there's a Department of Education which provides actually a breakdown of expected knowledge base, concepts at every grade level. And so this is a great place to start. And each state may be slightly different, but the grade levels tend to be very, very similar. And so I would say one thing that you could definitely do is to start with your Department of Education. And you just Google, so if you live in Texas, your Texas Department of Education, or if you live in Michigan, Michigan Department of Education. Actually, on our HSLDA website, we have a couple of other resources which are really, really good. The World Book is one of our resources that we have, and the World Book is a typical course of studies, and it's wonderful because it lays out preschool all the way through 12th grade, and it provides a list of the concepts and some suggested materials that you could cover through all those grades, and it goes through each of those content areas. And like you said, it gives you more than just that. Do math and reading and science, and so it gives those concrete skills that you actually learn. It breaks down what are those skills that you learn in reading in first grade, and what do you do in first grade in language arts. And so it really gives you something a little bit more concrete than just do reading in first grade. And so those are 2 places to really, really get you going. So
I love that too. And I tell people too about Hewitt Learning. They're out in Washington State, but they provide a free PDF. So you can go to hewittlearning.com and look for that free PDF of learning standards for kindergarten through 8th grade. So it's really nice because you can just print it off. And then what I used to do when my girls were younger, especially, and I was, wanting to have some kind of checklist, something to help me make sure we're on track, is I would print that off, and every couple of months I would look through the math learning skills and I would go, yep, we've covered that. Yes, and I'd highlight it with a highlighting marker, get my highlighter out. And then that was helping me. I might even date it, that yes, this is when I know that's mastered and it's taken care of. And if there was something we hadn't covered in science, for instance, then I'd go, oh, I think I'll do that next week, and I'd write that down so that we would make sure we had things covered. But that's a great thing to do. And also if you buy a true curriculum, a lot of times they're going to have that scope and sequence too that you were talking about, and help people know when we're finished, when we've done things adequately. Yep,
Absolutely. A scope and sequence will be your best friend.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Really
I see Sheila Greer is asking, does the child have to be evaluated by a teacher yearly? This is a really good question. And this, the first thing, of course, we tell every homeschooler is to figure out what your state laws are, because every state is a little bit different. So there's no one size fits all to this question. We would just recommend that you figure out what your state requirements are. And if you join HSLDA, we have legal representation at every state. And so they're a great resource for you to figure out or to assist with understanding what your state requirements are. But every state is a little bit different. And so there's no one size fits all to that question. But some states do require yearly. Some states do require different evaluations, and they specify exactly what needs to be done at the end of each year.
Hey, going back to our original question, Sheila Greer Riggenbach, she was asking, so do I need to go to my state standards? That's just a suggestion. You don't have to follow state standards. And a lot of folks don't want to follow state standards. They might be really based on Common Core standards, which a lot of people have a problem with. And so that's why we were also mentioning using World Book or doing Hewitt, because they're not tied to any state standards. It's just generally gives you an idea of what a first grader would know in math, or what a third grader would know in English or grammar. So just wanted to clarify that. You do not have to follow your state standards as a homeschooler. Let's see, what else do we have going on?
Let's see. I see Karen Santiago is asking how to get grants, funds, or scholarships for homeschool families. This is a big one. There are specific grants and funds and scholarships for homeschool families, and sometimes it just takes time to find them. There is no one out there just trying to hand us stuff, I'll tell you that one. It does definitely take time, and some of them are state specific. There are certain grants that are specific for different students. For example, there are some monies that are allocated for students with specific disabilities. There are monies that are allocated for specific programs, specific therapies. And so you really just have to look. There's no one place that you can look. It's kind of like propelling your child to college. You just have to be vigilant in finding those funds, but they are available. The HSLDA actually has a compassion fund that we have for homeschoolers. There are requirements to actually access the funds, but like I said, they are available, but you just have to figure out what the requirements are for these fundings. And they're different in each state. So, and if you are a member, again, we do have a listing that we can offer to you, so you can actually look into some of these organizations. And so we do have some leads that we can provide you.
We do. I know, we're going to have a Facebook Live specifically about special needs, right, Rochelle? So
Absolutely.
We'll probably talk about that more in that session too. And kind of regarding special needs, I did see a question about, are there good dyslexia programs? And the answer to that question is yes. We won't spend a ton of time on that in this session. This is more for just general typical learners, but be looking for programs that are Orton Gillingham based. That's kind of the gold standard for teaching children that have dyslexia. And some that are commercially and very easy to implement and available to homeschoolers. All About Reading is one. The Barton program is would fall under that category too. What else, Rochelle, that parents can implement? That's great for kids with
Those are really good
dyslexia.
ones. There's a computerized program. Nessie is
Oh,
a
yeah.
fairly new one, but that is based off of that multisensory kind of approach
Mm-hmm.
for kids that are a little younger that with dyslexia. And so there are a couple of those programs based off of that multisensory approach. And we will definitely elaborate more when we have that special needs focus in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Actually, I think it's next month.
Okay. And then another one that's online is called Reading Horizons at Home. And what's nice about that, number one, it's Orton Gillingham based. They also do training for parents that's free to you. And then also, they have 2 tracks, one for younger kids and then one for kids that are age 10 and up. So it's not quite as juvenile, not as many little cutesy things. It doesn't feel as babyish. So that's nice too for that program. Let's see, what else do we have?
Ooh, how do you unschool?
Mm.
That's a good one.
Mhm.
Well, let me first say that unschooling takes time,
Mm.
um, and you have to give yourself grace, and it is a process. But I think the first thing you have to do is you just have to sit back and make priorities. What are your priorities? What is the purpose? Find your purpose for homeschooling. What are your priorities for your child by homeschooling, and what are your family priorities? And I think when you figure out your why for homeschooling. Why did you choose to homeschool? I think some of that unschooling naturally starts to evolve when you think about the priorities of your family. Of course, that is not an easy answer. I mean, that could be a Facebook Live in itself. But I think when you start to think about the why are you homeschooling? Is it because you want to instill the love of learning? Is it that you want to change to like more of a mastery-based system for your child? You want to enrich their learning? You want to deal with kind of a holistic, you want a more integrated kind of learning. You want to make sure that your child is mastering learning, building a stronger foundation. So is it for, um, um, Christian reasons, or is it for social reasons? So kind of thinking about why you're doing it, I think will unveil some of that, the pieces of unschooling for you, and how you're going to unpeel back the layers and make your homeschool program into something that you want it to be. I think that's the first step in that. What do you think, Krisa?
I agree. I think that's so important. It's always important to know your why, because that helps to sustain you through days that aren't so easy or idyllic. But sometimes something has happened that just has tipped you over the edge, and you're like, okay, I'm doing this, and so focus on that and giving your child experiences to help to bring healing to that area. If it was bullying, maybe there were behavior issues going on with your child. So, creating an environment where they feel safe would be really important. And I think a big part of unschooling and kind of helping them to transition, because, and sometimes it depends on your background too, but I know for those of us that have a background in teaching, it's really easy to try, well, I'm going to create school at home. And that's not really what homeschooling, it can be that, but it doesn't have to be that. And so, I think it does take some transitioning, especially for your kiddos, if they've been in a traditional school setting all of their lives, to kind of go, whoa, okay, there's a different way to do
Right.
this. And so just creating that environment where they can feel safe making mistakes, or they can, you can just spend lots of time making lots of deposits into their
Absolutely.
spirit and helping them to feel confident and good about themselves again, if that was the situation. So I think that's important.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Let's see, what else is going on here? Some other questions.
We have a lot of inquiries about special needs.
We do.
Um, we
It's
do. So
huge, huge,
yes,
and a
and
huge
I'm
reason why people are
excited.
homeschooling.
Yes, I'm excited, and I hope that all of these inquiries come back um, to our topic that is focused specifically on special needs. So we will touch on them briefly. So
Mhm.
Diana, I don't want to slaughter your last name, Brindisi. She asked, let's see, mom of soon-to-be second grader in Nevada with ADHD struggling to read. Any tips? Um,
Mm.
let's see. Second grade. Okay, so still young.
Mhm.
There's a lot that could be said. Second grade is still young, and so the first thing I would say is not to panic, because you can still have late bloomers and be fine. You know, a lot of parents kind of panic when kids don't hit certain time frames. But I want to say that the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that you're not on the time clock. We're not
Mm.
punching a time clock, and development happens when it happens. And we just love our kids until they grow into their own. And so what you want to see is that they're growing. And so you may want to just look at what you're using and look at their development, and see, are there specific areas in reading? I mean, reading is a huge area. And so um, just know that reading is more than just calling out words. I mean, there's
Mm.
decoding, there's comprehension, there's fluency. And so all of these things together. And so when you are looking at reading, you kind of have to pull that apart and figure out what aspects of reading are going well. Do you have a really good decoder, but comprehension is kind of tough when you kind of, trying to pull apart what actually happened after you read? Or do you have a kiddo that struggles with the actual decoding part of it? Are they struggling to actually sound out the words to the point where they're really choppy, and when they finish that one sentence or that paragraph, all of a sudden they have no clue what they're saying or what they've read because it was so choppy? And so reading is such a multifaceted kind of skill that it's really difficult to kind of answer that question without knowing specifically what part of reading is difficult. And so we could probably process that a little bit more if we had a little bit more information. Um,
Rochelle, one thing that I did when I was concerned about my own child, and she was about that age, is I had her evaluated by a reading specialist, which is pretty low key, and it
sure.
didn't cost a lot of money either. And so a reading specialist has worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children, and they're going to be able to not diagnose for dyslexia, but they're going to be able to say, hey, this is very typical, don't worry about it, or
Hmm.
it seems like maybe you need to spend a little bit more time working on, whatever facet of reading. Or they might say, based on what you've told me and everything that you've done, I'm seeing some red flags here that make me concerned. And then you can take the next step to really diagnose that. That was helpful. And I also like to tell parents too, because I think sometimes this gets left off. We're so focused on teaching our kids the letters of the alphabet and recognizing them, naming them, and learning the sounds that we often neglect to do those phonological skills. Like, can your child rhyme? If you say
Hmm.
act, can they put it together and say cat? Can they generate rhyming words? Can they tell you how many syllables are in a word? And those are all oral things that sometimes get skipped over and we don't spend enough time on. So those are some good things to make sure that they're in place as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, we could spend a whole session just on dyslexia for sure. It's such a huge, huge need. I think well, I won't even try to say what the statistics are for dyslexia, but a lot of children deal with that, and adults too. So, and it does run in families. That's another thing too. So, let's see. What else do we have going on here?
Okay, let's see.
Oh, I just saw a good one.
Okay, what do you see?
It says, do you have to buy, this is from Cece, do you have to buy a curriculum like a Becca, or can you create your own?
Good one.
So the answer is No, you don't have to buy a curriculum from Abeka. However, I will say this. Like in my situation, I was a working, when my girls were younger, I was a working mom and a homeschooling mom. And I had taught for 20 some years, but honestly, I did not have time to reinvent the wheel. I
Yeah,
just didn't
that's
have
true.
enough hours in the day. And so I bought a curriculum that was already laid out for me. And I could tweak it and make it work for I always tell families, make your curriculum work for you, don't work for the curriculum. You don't have to do every single thing that's on there. But at the same time, a lot of homeschoolers do like an eclectic approach. They might say, okay, I'm going to do language arts and reading with Abeka, but I'm going to do my own thing for science this year. We're going to do that at co-op, or so yeah, you can make it what you want it to be. It kind of depends on your time, for one thing. And then I also, especially when your kids are younger, I do encourage you to use some sort of proper curriculum, because that way you're making sure you're not missing any of the skills that need to be taught. A curriculum typically builds on itself. And the person that wrote the curriculum knows where they're going with it. Sometimes when you buy everything that your second grader needs to know at Sam's or Costco, it's kind of like a review and it's skipping over some things. So the answer is yes, but I guess with caution. What would you say, Rochelle?
Definitely, and I'm like you. When I first started homeschooling, I was that creative one. I am a teacher by trade, and so I was like, oh, I can do this. This is going to be exciting. So I went it all gung ho, and I was just going to put everything together because I was excited. I liked the little piece of this, and a little piece of that, and I started putting it all together, and I realized very, very quickly that it was completely overwhelming. And so, not that I couldn't do it because I was a teacher by trade, but it was a lot. And so I say that first year is going to be overwhelming regardless, and
Mhm.
whether you're a teacher or not, just getting into the routine of having your kid being able to receive you as mom and then teacher. That's
Mhm.
a transition in itself.
Mhm.
And then understanding that, oh, you've played with mom all these years and now you've got to do school with mom, work school. And so the first year is just a little transition for everybody in the house. And so to have that already made curriculum, I agree with Krisa, is a little bit easier. Not necessarily, there's tons to choose from, so it doesn't have to be Abeka. Abeka
Right.
seems to be one that when you Google it, Abeka comes up. So there's tons to choose from, but I would say for that first year, while everything is coming together and you're getting your paperwork and figuring out your laws and you're looking for co-ops and there are tons of other things to do, I would say go with that put together curriculum, and then when you feel really confident in what you're doing with your routines and everything is going smoothly, then kind of splurge. And if you feel a little creativity kind of nudge on you, then go for it. I say be as creative as you want, but settle into a routine first. That would be my big piece of advice, to settle into a routine and get confident in that first.
Exactly. Let's see here. What do you think? Rita asks, what do you think is the easiest way to create a portfolio, online or folder, since COVID? Um, I think portfolios can be done, it's really as unique as you are. So if you are tech savvy, there are lots of options for doing a portfolio on that format. Some people, their portfolio looks more like a box with everything in it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, it's going to be a binder with different, samples from math, samples from reading, samples from science. And some people, it's a combination where you've got, you've documented everything using photos. And so you have digital pictures, or you might have a video of a project that they did. So it's really as unique as your family and as your children. There's no one right way to do a portfolio.
Yeah, I like that answer. Some people are more comfortable with technology, and so they just run with it. I mean, some people are just technology. They're just breathing technology, and they're just excited to try new things, and it just comes naturally. But if I said that you had to do an electronic portfolio, some people would just automatically cringe, and it would be work.
Yeah.
But if you are into technology and that is just your gift or that's your hobby, then absolutely run with it. You can have fun. This could be, I mean, you could even make it a family thing. Do it as your end of the year, celebration, as the way to celebrate your homeschool year. I know plenty of people that do that. Putting together their portfolio, you know so like Krista said, it can be as unique as your family, and so that is the flexibility in homeschooling, and I love it because I've seen some really, really creative portfolios. I am still a paper and binder person.
Me too.
Without a doubt.
Me
I am
too. Me
not quite
too.
there yet, but I've seen some
Hmm.
amazing things.
Hmm. Right. Let's see here. I see some questions that are kind of legal in nature, about why do homeschoolers have to do this or that. So I would encourage you to just visit our website, hslda.org, and see if you can find some of those answers there. As far as on our legal overview pages, it talks about what sporting events homeschoolers are not events, but activities that homeschoolers are able to participate in, and what subjects have to be taught, things like that. Let's see, what else do we have in here, Rochelle? Dun, dun, dun,
Oh, let's
dun.
see. Before I saw a really great question come up. I can't remember who it was by, but there was a question about whether it was okay to skip a grade, which I thought was a great question.
Oh.
Whether it was okay to skip a grade if your child knows the material, like kindergarten level moving up to first, and what was the
Mm-hmm.
appropriate amount of time to sit down into the workbooks or school books, kindergarten, first, second grade. Her kiddo seemed to be blowing through the books because he was ready and he knew it. But if she skipped a grade, how would she know for sure that he had covered everything? And are there laws that said that she had to have proof that they had completed a grade? Oh, this is from Danielle Bennett. So what are your
Okay.
thoughts on that?
Well, again, I don't know if there's a that was a lot. There are a lot of questions. I'm going to start kind
Loaded
of
you up.
at the beginning a
Sure.
little bit, and then maybe this is just my personal bias because I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. But if you have I try to encourage moms that call. That are saying, I've got a 5-year-old and he's blowing through the kindergarten thing. I think I'm going to skip him to first grade and we're going to work through the summer because he just loves school. And so by the time by August, when we start school again, he's going to be starting second grade because we'll have finished first. And so so they're like 6 years old starting second grade. And my here are my personal thoughts about that. I think if your child is like just blowing through the workbooks, they've finished all of the curriculum skills, and curriculum isn't really I won't even go into that. Anyway, they've finished all the curriculum skills, okay? Um, and it's a younger child, like kindergarten or first grade. I say spend the rest of the year diving into what your child loves. You've got time to do projects. You've got time to go on field trips. You've got time to just really nurture. And here's my most important thing: let him be a kid and let him
Yeah.
just enjoy and play. Plus, if it's a boy, I used to say this. I'm an old kindergarten teacher. I taught kindergarten for like 10 years in the public school system. So this is what I would say: think about down the road, do you want your 17-year-old or your 16-year-old to be starting college at that age?
Right.
And you don't know, but sometimes you kind of know that, okay, I think this child is probably going to need a little time to mature. So here's the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that you're not just focused on academics. There is the cognitive, the academic development, but there's also the social development, there's the emotional development, there's the physical development. I mean, just so much more. And as a spiritual development, and you have that opportunity and that time to nurture that. Are there times to skip a grade? I will tell you. I skipped a grade. I did. I skipped a grade. And I look back and I think, well, that was perfect. I see God's hand in that and timing because it does impact your future. I met my husband when I was 17 and a half years old. I wouldn't have met him if I hadn't graduated at 17. Like, so there are lots of things. Their child's destiny is all wrapped up, and it's not something to enter into lightly for sure. Um, as far as like, is it legal? Every state has different compulsory laws, and I don't know exactly how all that works, but as far as skipping a grade, um, sometimes they will say, you can finish school early, but you have to take this certain standardized test or have a certain score on a college entrance exam or something like that. It seems like I've seen things like that as I look through our legal pages. So that's kind of my take. Just kind of, I would say in the early, like kindergarten through third grade, hold back on skipping grades per se and give your child more time to be a child. And then if you're in middle, seventh grade, and you're like, this child is just off the charts academically, so mature, socially, emotionally, then that might be, in my mind, just a better time to skip a grade. But that's really my opinion.
I think that's excellent. I'm going to piggyback on that just a little bit. I think very similarly, but when I think about school, and I think about learning in general, I think that what we put in our kids and what we train our kids to do is a lot more than academics. And so when we talk about skipping a grade, I think we need to think a lot broader than just the academic piece and going through the books. So, for example, what we also want to train our kids is to be leaders, right? And so what does it take to be a leader? It's not only what they know in terms of content, it is persistence, okay? So if your kid is running through academically the books, then have they even faced a challenge? Have they approached anything that's difficult? And if they haven't, then we haven't even taught them to persist through a challenge. So when they get through something that's difficult, how do they deal with that? Are they going to have a tantrum? Are they going to give up? Because that's one of those skills that we need to teach them. We need to teach them that when something is difficult, they need to persist. If they are that young and we are skipping grades, and we're already talking about skipping grades, we haven't even taught them how to organize. Those skills and being able to organize their own, being self-sufficient, the maturity piece. So all of these are non-academic skills that need to be taught with the academics that come with just learning. And so it's a lot more than just going through the content. And so just through learning tasks, because you can provide your child a much more different content. So gifted children, of course, they don't need more, they need more challenge, right? And so if your kid is blowing through the books, they don't need more, they just need more, they need different. And so that may be something that you might need to explore. Might need somebody to help you explore how to make the work more challenging. Not make it more difficult, but to make it more challenging. Because a lot of times they want to create their own knowledge. Instead of you presenting them with the information, have them create their own knowledge. Give them a tool and have them create their own information. Too often I think that we believe that, higher level math is only for older kids. Well, he can't do that or she can't do that because we haven't done the precursors to understand geometry, or we haven't done the precursors to understand, pre-algebra. Well, if this kid is blowing through it, then maybe he or she can construct his own or her own knowledge to actually do that, and they will consider that a challenge, and that will get them where they need to be so that they are fulfilled and you are able to provide them the challenge that they need. So it's not always going through stuff faster. If you find your child going through stuff really fast, then maybe you need to revamp the curriculum to provide them more challenge, not more, but more of a challenge. And so I always say for kids that are blowing through stuff, they may need something different, just not necessarily more. And so I encourage you, if you are not an HSLDA member, to maybe join HSLDA and have one of our educational consultants help you to maybe think outside the box in terms of stretching and providing more of a challenge for your kiddo who may be just blowing through academically, and how to reorganize things. But like Krisa said, I am not suggesting that skipping is not necessarily an option that may be appropriate for some kids, because it is. So there's no right or wrong answer to that. It is appropriate for some kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, it's good. And, and to kind of, I think part of that question too was how much time should I be spending on academics? And what we say in our early years department, and really I found this to be true even as a classroom teacher for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, you know, probably an hour or 2 hours a day on focused skills. Like, if, for instance, in math, that might mean I'm going to sit down and we're going to do patterns together, and we're going to talk about all kinds of different patterns for kindergartners. There are A-B patterns, A-B-B patterns. So I
Mm-hmm.
might sit down and do that for, 20 minutes or so. And then and then we'll do some focused work on handwriting or do some different activities that are developmentally appropriate for that, and also reading, foundational reading skills. So you might be able to get that accomplished in 1 to 2 hours, but that's not all that your day is. And I think that really dovetails well into what Rochelle was talking about, is that you can set up a little restaurant and you're going to role
Mm-hmm.
play. Or when my girls were little, we used to have a doctor's office that we would set up, and we had, one of my girls would pretend to be the doctor and one would be the mommy, and so we had print there like magazines, and we had a clipboard where the doctor could write out prescriptions. So you're doing all this literacy and you're tying that in. And so those are some things to do, or even just doing a project or doing puzzles or working in the sand and water table and having this, whoa, this isn't working the way it's supposed to be working, and working through frustration. I think what Dr. Rochelle was nodding to was like mindset, to have
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
perseverance and some grit to push through things that are hard. So you have an opportunity for the rest of your day. If you're going to have intentional, maybe you're going to homeschool till noon for a kindergarten, for instance, maybe an hour or two is focus skills, but then the other couple of
Mm-hmm.
hours is reading together or doing a project, and letting them try to solve a problem on their own. And that makes the whole day so well-rounded. So, all right, we probably could go on and on and on about that too, but it's something that people ask a lot. And then I just saw another one. My child is on the autism spectrum. Should I hold them back? What about retention? What about holding back? And you're the specialist. I know we're not doing special needs, but just briefly, can you address that question?
Sure. So the whole idea, it's almost similar. The whole idea of holding back and propelling forward are very similar, and there's no one size fits all to this either. There are situations where holding back is appropriate. Now, are we talking about, was there specific to like a kindergarten? Is it the beginning or
I think she said that maybe the public school started them in kindergarten, but they weren't really ready for kindergarten.
so
Let's say my
redoing
son is
kindergarten?
autistic and was not ready to start kindergarten last year. What about holding children back a grade?
So redoing the kindergarten curriculum?
That seems like that might be it. Yes.
Well, so if you're homeschooling, this is what I say. If you're homeschooling, my thing is um, grades to me are a public school mentality. That's the first thing I want to say. And so if and I say that because, for example, my children, um, for the longest time, people would say, well, what grade are you in? And they found it so odd that they just didn't know what grade they were in. Why?
Mm.
Because my kids had different grade levels for the different curriculums they were in, basically.
Mhm.
They love science and social studies. And so half the time they would be in, my kids are such different age levels that I would group them together. And a lot of times it was usually one of the older kids' curriculum. So it would be like maybe my fifth and my seventh grader would work together, and they would have the seventh grade curriculum in science, and I would just work with them with whatever, and I would give them different assignments, but they would all work with that, and we would discuss things. And so, but then reading, they would be working within their own grade level, or we would do almost a unit study where we dealt with novels, and
Mm.
we would just process novels, and it was great because they would be together and we'd have great discussions. And so they always found it odd that they didn't know what grade they were. I felt bad, but it's like, listen, baby, you're in fifth grade, but so it was, and it was always, you're working on this and we're moving you forward. And so, regardless of what grade they're in, find out where they are with their skills, and your goal is to move them forward.
Mhm.
Because the other thing to remember too is that when you're working with them at home, they're not going to move at the same pace that they were if they were in the public school system. When they're
Mhm.
in the public school system, they are grouped together and they have to move at a certain pace because that's the way that things are introduced to them.
Mhm.
The group has to move together. I can only introduce this piece of information to you at this point because that's what the curriculum specifies. I can only do it on Tuesday, and whether you got it or not, I have to move on to Wednesday. And Wednesday, we can only do this. We can't go back. We have to do this. And so it's never a mastery thing, but you're home. If we do this on Tuesday and you didn't get it, we're going to do it on Wednesday. If you didn't get it, we're going to do it on Thursday. Okay. Or if we do it on Tuesday and it was too slow for you, we're going to introduce the next concept that we were going to do tomorrow today. And we're going to move. So I can't even predict the rate at which you're going to learn. You may plug through twice as fast what you would have done in public school. And so to lock them into a certain age or grade level doesn't necessarily follow the same pattern as if you were going to, as if they were in the public school system. And so that mindset is one of those almost unschooling things that you have to get into. The routines are different. We tell people all the time that 1 hour at home is the equivalent to almost 2 to 3 hours at school. There are no transitions. We don't have to greet the principal. We don't have to stand in line and go to the bathroom. We don't have to ask to get water. The
Mhm.
day just kind of flows. And, you have natural learning that happens from morning to evening. And so it's a different mindset. The learning is a different mindset. It's really hard not to learn. So
Mm.
the learning is ongoing. And so when you're thinking about should you hold them back, you may find out that your child is going to now learn and progress twice as fast. They may not have been ready in that particular situation, and they may be ready in this particular environment. And so you may see a different pattern of growth. They may have not excelled in that particular curriculum where they were held back from day to day, and they may excel in this curriculum that is individualized for them. And so just keep that in the back of your head when you're trying to decide which grade or, to hold back or, that kind of thing when you're trying to figure out where or what to put down on paper for your child.
Right. And that we're just about out of time, Rochelle. I can't
I
believe
know
this
we could
has
go on forever.
flown by. But I'm seeing some questions, and even that question kind of goes back to where we first started about how do I know when I've finished? Well, you also need to know where to begin, right? And so those placement,
Absolutely.
I would encourage you if you are just joining us or you joined midway to go back and listen to the recording because we talked about some different ways to use placement or checklist to kind of see what your child knows, and where you're heading to. And then I have seen a couple of questions before we wrap up about end of year testing or standardized testing. And there are some really great options, and we've got information about end of year test, standardized tests for homeschoolers and where to get those tests on our website. So I would encourage you to visit hslda.org, and there's a tab on our homepage that says, I think, testing and grades, something like that, and you'll find that article there. Maybe they'll post that in the comments as well. But there are untimed tests, there are online tests, there are paper pencil tests, tests that you can administer or that someone even without a bachelor's degree can administer. So all of that's on our website. So encourage you with that. I don't know. Do we have time for one more question, maybe? Or do we need to wrap it up?
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay. Let's see here. What's going on?
Let me just say really briefly, I see the question, how can bilingual families succeed in homeschooling
That's
when
what I
English
was just
is
going to
not
say.
the
Yes.
primary language?
Hmm.
We do have, we actually are actively adding to our website, and we do have resources for bilingual families now. So we do have resources to support bilingual families, and
Yes.
so you can definitely get in contact with us here at HSLDA to support. But we do have the resources that absolutely resounding yes. We can support families who do not use English as a primary mode to communicate. So a resounding yes to you, Diana.
Yes. Awesome. Very good. All right. All right, let's do one more. Goal setting in homeschool. That's important. And there is a planner that I used one year. It was Deborah Bell's planner, And what I loved about her planner and what was challenging to me as in her planner was that every month she would have you write out your goals for your student, and not just academic goals, but maybe goals that you had for your kids relationally, or just, you know, it's wide open, your goals. But I would encourage you, when you ask about goal setting, that's a pretty broad question, but write it out. Write out what your goals are, because then you can refer back to them. Sometimes, I don't know, I keep a lot of stuff up in this head of mine. And I have the best intentions, but I don't always do that. I mean, for instance, when my daughter was in kindergarten, I wanted to focus on tying shoes, because that was something I never had time to do when I taught kindergartners in the public school. And I didn't write it down. And guess what? It was like January, and I'm like, I meant to be focusing on that, and I forgot. And so, yeah, write down your goals, and that way you can refer back to them. And then also you can see, hey, I have accomplished some things that I didn't realize that I had. So, that's important too. And like Rochelle said earlier, know your why. So, and write down your why. That'll help you. So, but I think we're just about out of time for this live Q&A. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us, and for all of your questions. And if we weren't able to get to your question, I do apologize, but please know that HSLDA does have a lot of resources on our website, including webinars on a variety of topics, and a lot of them showcasing Dr. Rochelle. She's a regular on there, and I know you'll find them to be helpful. I know I do. So we'll post a link to those in the comments. So be looking for that link to our webinars and workshops. In addition to our website resources, I also wanted to let you know that HSLDA members have access to a great team of educational consultants to help you answer questions that you have about teaching your kids. We have consultants who specialize in special needs in high school and pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. And we're ready to help you tackle all your challenges, whether it's finding a math curriculum that clicks for your child or making a 4-year plan for high school. We're here to help. And so that is also, you're going to find a link to our website and how to join HSLDA so that you can have access to our consultants in the comments. So don't forget that this live Q&A is one of 4, and we will be hosting 3 more lives for all of your questions on 6th through 8th grade, high school, and homeschooling a student with special needs. Next July 7th at 1 p.m., Heather Fromack and Natalie Mack will be live to answer all your questions about homeschooling children in 6th through 8th grade. And we'll post the link in the comments so that you can RSVP for that live and check out others. So please look for that. But thanks again for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.